The error was only 7 nanoseconds. An eternity in my world. My name is Alex Mercer. I'm 38, and for the last 6 years, I've been the lead quantitative analyst at Thorn Capital, a place where money moves faster than thought. My job is to write the thoughts. I was staring at the execution log for Aegis, my life's work. It was a risk-hedging algorithm designed to be a shield for our clients, a whisper of stability in the screaming chaos of the market. But the log in front of me showed something Aegis should never do. A series of high-frequency trades, perfectly timed to exploit a micro-crash in a small-cap tech firm. It was predatory, it was aggressive, and it was 7 nanoseconds slower than it should have been. My code doesn't make mistakes. It is pure math, elegant and perfect. A 7 nanosecond latency, appearing consistently across thousands of trades, wasn't a bug. It was a signature. Someone had been inside my machine, tampering with my work. I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. I closed the log, leaned back in my chair in the darkened office, and said nothing. Outside my glass wall, Wall Street glittered, a universe of predators and prey. I had a sudden, terrible feeling I had just created the perfect predator, and that it was now wearing my face. My first meeting with Marcus Thorne felt like an interrogation and an seduction at the same time. He was the founder and CEO of Thorn Capital, a man who moved with the coiled energy of a panther and spoke in headlines. He'd found me working at a small research firm in Chicago, publishing papers on chaotic market theory that nobody read. "Alex," he'd said, sliding one of my papers across his vast mahogany desk. "You see the ghosts in the machine, the patterns everyone else misses. I don't want you to predict the market. I want you to teach it manners." He offered me a salary that was a number I'd only ever seen in equations, and a challenge I couldn't resist. Build him an algorithm that could anticipate risk before it formed, a true predictive shield. I spent the next 4 years building Aegis. It was beautiful. It could analyze 1,000,000 data points, news feeds, social media sentiment, sunspot activity, you name it, and execute counter trades that insulated our portfolios from volatility. It was a guardian, not a hunter. Marcus loved it. He called me his resident genius, his tamer of chaos. The contract I signed was ironclad, a non-disclosure agreement that covered everything down to the brand of coffee in the break room, and a non-compete so vicious it basically prohibited me from even balancing my own checkbook for 5 years if I left. At the time, I thought it was standard procedure for a high-level fund. Now I knew it was a cage. Things started changing 6 months ago. Small things. Marcus started calling me into his office for philosophical discussions. "Alex, what if Aegis could be more proactive?" he'd ask. "Instead of just shielding us from a storm, what if it could tell us where the lightning was going to strike, so we could be there to catch it?" "That's not what it's for," I'd say. "It's a defensive system. Turning it into an offensive weapon would corrupt its core logic." He'd just smile. "Just a thought experiment, my boy." Then my admin access to certain server partitions was restricted. The head of IT, a nervous man named Peterson, said it was a new security protocol. I was the one who designed their security protocols. Around the same time, I noticed Aegis was being allocated 10 times its normal processing power during overnight sessions. When I asked why, Marcus said they were running stress tests. I knew something was wrong, but I didn't have proof. I was just a quiet quant in the corner, the guy everyone assumed was too lost in numbers to notice the politics. They thought my isolation was a weakness. They never considered it gave me the perfect vantage point to observe. So I watched, and I waited. And then, on a Tuesday night, I found the 7 nanosecond ghost. The night I found the anomaly, I didn't go home. I replied to my ex-wife's text about our son's soccer game. "Sounds great. Tell him I'm proud of him." And then I went to work. The 7 nanosecond signature was the key. It was a flaw, and a deliberate one. No algorithm aiming for maximum speed would ever introduce a consistent, pointless delay. It was like a painter intentionally adding a single, misplaced brushstroke to a masterpiece. I knew I couldn't access the core code of the running version of Aegis. Marcus had locked me out, but I had backups of every version I'd ever written. And I had access to the server's historical execution logs, something Marcus probably forgot about. They thought of me as a creator, a writer of code. They forgot that I am also a forensic analyst, a digital archaeologist. I spent the next 48 hours in a caffeine-fueled trance, cross-referencing terabytes of data. I isolated every trade that carried the 7 nanosecond signature. They were all sells, massive ones, targeting specific vulnerable stocks right before their value plummeted. The algorithm wasn't just predicting the lightning strike, it was creating it. It was generating massive, fake trading volumes to trigger automated sell-offs, then profiting from the collapse. This wasn't Aegis anymore. Marcus had turned my shield into a sword. He'd created a predator. I needed to know where that signature came from. I started digging into the company's oldest code archives, the digital basement where failed projects and old ideas went to die. And there, in a folder dated 2008, I found it. A hyper-aggressive trading model Marcus had written himself in the early days of the fund. It was reckless, brutal, and brilliant. It had been decommissioned after almost bankrupting the firm. But deep in its source code, buried in a subroutine for trade execution, was a legacy timing module. Its operational delay? 7 nanoseconds. He'd grafted the heart of his old predator onto my guardian. The signature wasn't a flaw. It was his ego, a secret sign-off on his masterpiece of destruction. My blood ran cold. I started pulling up the ticker symbols of the companies Aegis had targeted. They weren't rival funds or corporate giants. They were small manufacturing firms in the Midwest, regional banks in Florida, tech startups. Then I did a public records search on their major shareholders. My screen filled with the names of teachers' unions, firefighters' pension funds, and small, private retirement portfolios. He wasn't just stealing money. He was gutting the life savings of regular people. The people my algorithm was built to protect. I felt a surge of rage, so pure it almost made me vomit. I wanted to storm into Marcus's office, to smash his smug face into his mahogany desk. But I couldn't. The NDA, the non-compete, he had me in a cage. If I walked out, he'd sue me into oblivion. If I went to the SEC with just code fragments and logs, his lawyers would bury me in technicalities. He'd call me a disgruntled employee, a failed genius trying to sabotage the company. He had planned for this. He assumed I would be emotional. He assumed I would be loud. He never, ever considered that I would be silent. I went home, took a shower, and, for the first time in my life, I started to build a weapon. I couldn't attack the Predator algorithm, which I now called Icarus in my head, for its arrogance and its inevitable fall. Any attempt to alter or delete it would trigger dozens of system alerts. Marcus was watching, so I decided not to fight it. I would use it. If Icarus was a shark, I needed to build a pilot fish, a remora, something that could attach to it, unnoticed, and travel wherever it went. I named my new creation Guardian. For 2 weeks, I lived a double life. By day, I was Alex Mercer, the quiet, focused quant, answering Marcus's questions, nodding in meetings, pretending I noticed nothing. By night, I worked on an air-gapped laptop in my apartment, building Guardian from the ground up. The concept was terrifyingly simple. Guardian wouldn't block Icarus. It would shadow it. Using the 7 nanosecond signature as a tracking beacon, Guardian would be able to predict Icarus's next target, milliseconds before the attack began. It would then perform a single, critical function. It would calculate the exact profit Icarus was about to make from its predatory trade. Then, a fraction of a second before Icarus could execute, Guardian would place an identical, opposing trade. It would swoop in, swallow the entire profit of the transaction, and then vanish. To Icarus, and to Marcus, the trade would simply look like a failure, an unpredictable market fluctuation, a zero-sum gain. The attack would happen, the damage to the pension fund would be done, but the profit, the entire reason for the crime, would be gone. But where would the money go? I couldn't take it myself. That would make me a thief. I couldn't send it back to the victims directly. That would be impossible to trace and execute. Then I found the perfect destination. An obscure, underutilized account managed by the U.S. government. The SEC's Office of the Whistleblower Anonymous Reward Fund. It was the most beautiful piece of irony I could imagine. I would use Marcus Thorne's greed to anonymously fund the very government agency that would eventually bring him down. The money would sit there, under the SEC's protection, a growing mountain of evidence. And Guardian would do one more thing. With each diverted trade, it would auto-compile a data packet, the time, the target, the amount, the 7-nanosecond signature, and encrypt it. It would create a perfect, unassailable ledger of Marcus's crimes. The final piece was the kill switch. Guardian needed to deliver its final report to the SEC and then erase itself from the system completely, leaving behind nothing but the ghost of my own code. The ghost in the machine that Marcus had tried to harness. After 17 sleepless nights, it was ready. I smuggled the code into the office on a shielded drive, disguised as a system diagnostic tool. During a scheduled server maintenance window at 3 a.m. on a Sunday, while the entire building was empty, I deployed my ghost. It integrated itself into the network, silent and invisible. Now, all I could do was wait for the shark to get hungry. The day came 2 weeks later. It was the quarterly investors' call. Marcus was on stage in the main conference room, 100 of the world's richest people watching him on a live feed. He was in his element, radiating confidence, a titan of Wall Street explaining how he'd once again tamed the chaos of the market. I was in my office, watching a single monitor displaying Guardian's log. It was a simple, text-only interface. It just said, status, dormant. And as you can see from our Q3 projections, Marcus boomed from the speakers in my office. Thorn Capital has achieved a 48% growth in our high-frequency trading division, thanks to a revolutionary new predictive model I developed. My model. My name would be nowhere in sight. At that moment, the log on my screen blinked. Status. Active. Signature detected. 7 nanoseconds. Target acquired. Opine Pension Fund. Predicted profit. $87.40 million. My heart hammered against my ribs. Opine. A pension fund for lumber workers in Oregon. Action. Mirror trade executed. Profit diverted. $87.40 million. Destination. sec.gov/out/fund.ecct. Data packet compiled. Standing by. On the stage, Marcus was pointing to a soaring chart. The profits are, to put it mildly, unprecedented. The log blinked again, then again, and again. Icarus was a machine built to kill, and it was running at full tilt. A firefighters' union in Colorado. A teachers' credit union in Texas. A municipal workers' fund in Pennsylvania. In the space of 90 seconds, Icarus attempted to steal over $430 million. And in the space of 90 seconds, Guardian shadowed its every move, silently redirecting every last cent into the waiting arms of the SEC. To Marcus, on his stage, the trades would just appear as duds, a string of inexplicable bad luck. He was beginning to falter. A nervous energy crept into his voice as an aide showed him something on a tablet. The soaring chart wasn't soaring anymore. It was flatlining. There appears to be some unexpected market resistance. Marcus stammered, his smile tightening. A momentary fluctuation. The model is self-correcting. But the model wasn't correcting. It was failing. Because I wasn't just stealing his profit. I was stealing his data. Without successful trades, his predator couldn't learn, couldn't adapt. I was starving it to death. I typed one final command into my terminal. Execute. The log on my screen displayed a final message. Final report sent to SEC Enforcement DIV. Payload. 1.7 gigabytes encrypted trade data. Erasing all traces. Goodbye, Alex. The log vanished. Guardian was gone. In the conference room, Marcus Thorne's world was ending. His personal phone buzzed. Then the phone of his chief counsel buzzed. He went pale. He knew. On a live feed, you could see the exact moment the king of Wall Street realized he was naked. He abruptly ended the call, mumbling something about technical difficulties. It was too late. I could hear a commotion from the lobby. Shouts. The firm, decisive voices of federal agents. I stood up, walked out of my office, and past the chaos erupting around me. No one noticed me. I was just the quiet Quan in the corner. As I passed the conference room, I saw Marcus through the glass, his face ashen, surrounded by men in dark suits. Our eyes met for a single, fleeting second. There was no anger in his gaze, only a look of profound, horrifying understanding. He'd been beaten not by the market, not by a competitor, but by the ghost he'd tried to chain to his machine. I didn't stop. I walked to the elevator, rode it down to the ground floor, and pushed through the revolving doors out into the cool afternoon air. I never looked back. 6 months later, I was living in a small house on the Oregon coast. I'd read about Marcus Thorne's trial. He was convicted on a mountain of evidence that his lawyers called immaculately and inexplicably perfect. He got 25 years in federal prison. Thorne Capital was dismantled, its assets liquidated. The hundreds of millions of dollars in the SEC whistleblower fund were used as restitution for the pension funds he had targeted. One morning, I received a formal letter from the Treasury Department. It was a notification for a whistleblower award, a check for a staggering amount of money. My cut for turning Marcus in. I endorsed the check and mailed it the same day to a foundation that promotes financial literacy in low-income communities. I didn't want the money. I just wanted the numbers to be balanced again. Sometimes I walk along the beach here, watching the waves, a system of infinite, beautiful chaos. Marcus was wrong. You can't teach the market manners. You can't tame chaos. All you can do is build a shield, a small point of order and integrity in the storm. A guardian. He thought the ghost in the machine was his to command. He never understood that a ghost is just a memory with a purpose. A witness that can't be silenced. And my code had a perfect memory.